You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
Time to sharpen those swords. You're listening to Sabres Semantics, a hard-hitting interview and discussion show featuring players, alumni, media, and all others who have or still cover the NHL's Buffalo Sabres. With interesting stories from the past and current objective analysis, this show is sure to provide an entertaining and unique perspective for both Sabres and hockey fans alike.
Oh, brother, we are not worthy!
Exclusively on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Now, here's your host of Sabres Semantics, Brandon Caputo.
Welcome into another episode of Sabres Semantics right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work in Niagara since 1983. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad are with you to discuss the Buffalo Sabres' recent stretch of games here as they come out of the Four Nations break. We're also going to talk about the most recent game against the Anaheim Ducks. We have some post-game audio from that game as well, as I was able to cover that game. We're also going to talk about broad outlook going into the last 5 games before the NHL Trade Deadline, as well as we'll get swords up, swords down for things that Austin and I have thought of the Sabres as of late. Give us a follow on X at Sabres Semantics, and thank you to everybody that's tuned in on our YouTube version or the video version on YouTube. Make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell. And thank you to those that are listening today on your favorite on-demand audio platform. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. We post reels and small clips from our episodes on there as well. Austin, it's been an interesting, stretch of games here for the Sabres. Still last place, but they've been turning a corner as of late as far as what we've seen from them in the recent games. What's your, thoughts on this team? Because we've had so many, negative thoughts on the team this year that it's hard to come out of that when you're still in last. But what's been your assessment of what the teams look like as of late?
Yeah, 7-3 in their last 10, 6-1 in their last 7. You would think that's good. Obviously, it is good, but when the grand scheme of things, it's not, because they're still 11 points out of the playoffs. That's likely, we're heading towards year 14 here. But if you want to look at it in a more, specific, small, short-term thing here lately, it's been good. It's been entertaining. They've been scoring goals. We talk about before our last podcast, the big story we talked about was the New Jersey Devils fiasco in a game in which they won. They ended up beating Columbus the next game. They should have beaten Nashville in that last game before the break, but UPL kind of, crapped down his leg in that game. But it's if you kind of just it's been good, right? Alex Tuch playing really well. Tage Thompson's doing well. Dahlin looks like, Rasmus Dahlin again, in terms of he's now also shooting the puck in terms of dominating play and setting his teammates up. But we saw a little bit of what he is when he's at 100% health in that Ranger game, and a couple of shifts in the Ducks game. So it's been good. Doesn't really change anything long term for me in terms of this team, but I've at least tuned in and have enjoyed watching them play. I for a while there, it was just I'll throw the game on it. I'll do a bunch of stuff around the house the last little 2 weeks here and there. I know they're not making the playoffs or anything, but I'll throw the game on and I'll sit down and actually pay attention to the whole game. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, like you mentioned, watchability, I think, is there as of late. Other than Rob Ray getting hit in the face with a puck and then watching the next game in the final row of the seating, and Lindy Ruff, making fun of him in the post game and all that. we all love that sort of thing, but it's hard to really enjoy it when the team's still last place in the conference. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where like, yeah, it's funny, but maybe it would be a lot funnier if they were in a playoff spot or, at least battling for it right now. I know you try to find positives when you can. It's a long season, 82 games grind, but it's just hard to really think of it right now because if you're watching the video version, you look at the standings right now, they're still 2 points back at Pittsburgh, who's been on a complete free fall, and they look like they're going to be sellers at the deadline. And we're going to kind of talk about the 3 unrestricted free agents for the Sabres here leading up to the deadline. We're going to have our live deadline recap the night of the deadline for you guys wondering when our next show will be. We're going to be coming to you live for that. But I look at it, Austin, and I believe that they've been playing better at home. I think that was one of the questions Lance Lasowski asked Dylan Cozens, which we'll get into post-game audio from that Ducks game last night. But they have been playing better as of late at home. Again, the crowds still aren't what they are, but that's, a frustrated fan base over the last 14 years of no playoff games. But are you encouraged about the way that they're kind of taking more pride in the way that they're playing on home ice and not getting booed off the ice as regularly as we saw in the first half?
Yeah, I mean, six in a row at home? First time they've done that since the 10-game winning streak. So, yeah, that's a good thing. You want to play good on home ice. You want to be good on home ice. Like you said, it's something that hasn't been there for the Sabres lately, so it's good to see that. It's good to see them. I mean, when you think about it, it's just so hard to have that positive outlook because they really have been playing well at home. It's a good thing. The crowds, honestly, have probably been better than I think most people have anticipated. So, it's always, these are positives. These are things that are good, but it's just, you can't help but wonder, just don't lose 13 in a row. And these games that you've been winning lately are so much more meaningful. The crowds would be so much more raucous. The players would probably be so much more into it. And I'll give the players credit. The players are still enthusiastic about everything and they still seem to be trying. So it doesn't seem, for as deflating as this year could have been, it doesn't seem like it's gone full worst case scenario. So I guess that's a good thing. And maybe that's because, they're winning at home and the crowds aren't completely just getting on them every game like they have in years past.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we've seen, injuries and the lineup itself, we saw that Tuck and it's drawing a blank on me. Tuck and who was the other? Zucker was the other player that was game time decisions going into the game against Anaheim. Both of them ended up playing. That Tuck play looked like it could have been really serious, and he avoided big time injury with that play when he stayed down there. But when you look at the lineup, Greenway's back, and you see it, and it's pretty much healthy for the most part. So. I mean, Again, whether they make moves at the deadline or not, right now, this is the team that they had expected to be at the beginning of the year with their full complement. I know Tage is still on the wing recovering from that injury, but he's been good on the wing with Kulich, who had to leave the game and then came back with a shield on after getting that, up high in the face there. But what are you thinking from the way that they've kind of had to construct things now that everybody's kind of back where they should be? Benson's on the fourth line, which, again, I don't necessarily agree with that, but Lafferty's really the only guy that's out of the lineup right now that would have been in the lineup, pretty much the whole year. Yoki Haru, is in and out too. Bryson, but what's your outlook on the way the lineup looks right now?
Yeah, I mean, this is the lineup that they probably envisioned, right? It's a good thing, like you said. McLeod is, again, because Ruff had to kind of shuffle the lines in that Anaheim game, and it ended up working to get to his credit, right? Like that, to throw the kid line together. And then for them to immediately score, obviously, is a good thing. But, when before the lineup shuffled and the way it's gone the last couple of games, you kind of had, like you said, Benson was on the fourth line. McLeod was really slotting in as your second line center with Zucker and Tuck and playing well. Tage was on the wing. So it'll be kind of interesting to see if Ruff sticks with the lineup that was working or if he tries to because Tage did go back to center for the rest of that game. So I'm interested to see kind of what Ruff does for the Carolina game later tonight. But the lineup is like I said, it's such a weird thing because I don't think this team is as bad as they are in the standings, right? I don't think they're a bottom 5 team in the NHL, but that's where they are because they lost 13 in a row, and that's, you are what your record says you are. So right now they are that, but I do think long term that they will, when you look at the league standings, they're going to probably find their way out of this bottom 5, right? Pittsburgh is 2 points ahead of them, but Sabres have 4 games in hand on them. Seattle's 1 point ahead of Buffalo. Buffalo has 4 games in hand on them. They have games in hand on Anaheim, the Rangers, a couple of games in hand on Philly. Like all these teams that they're kind of just below, and 2 big games coming up against Montreal. If you find a way to win, like, you know what I mean. So like I think they'll kind of play their way, as annoying as it might be. They'll probably play their way back into that 8 to 12 overall range when it comes to the draft, and I think that's probably about as good as they are. They might be a little tad better than that, but when you lose 13 in a row, it's the hole that you dig yourself in, and that's kind of what you're seeing. So I think the lineup it still needs the tweaks that we've talked about multiple times, but yeah, this lineup when healthy, I think is a lot better than what their record has been, and I think we've seen that as of late. Like the odd times they do get healthy, they play really well. Jordan Greenway's a pretty good indicator of that. Every time he's come back from injury, he's looked really good and at least made an impact.
And there's always those polarizing players that we've talked about all year long that at the beginning of the year had been underperforming. You had Dylan Cozens come through with those 3 assists last night. You had Owen Power, who's been better as of late in the point department. Jack Quinn, we're still kind of waiting for him to get going. But those are really the 3 guys that I think have taken the most heat this year, other than your top stars, your Dahlins and your Tucks and your Thompsons that you expect every night to be great. But to me, like, and we're going to hear from Dylan Cozens, really shortly here. But what have you thought of the way that that Cozens and Power specifically have been playing as of late? 2 guys that take a lot of criticism on this team.
I think Power's played well, right? He still has his flaws here and there, but I think Owen Power is, is he going to be the elite producer that Rasmus Dahlin is? Probably never, but he made a great play on that to set up that JJ Peterka goal, right? Like he made a great play on that game. He's played well. Cozens is, I think, even more extreme in terms of his up and down play. When he's good, he's good. When he's bad, he looks like he doesn't know how to play hockey. And despite what a lot of people say, I don't see that with Power. I think when Power struggles, it's only in one area, and that's the area that we all know he has had struggles in, which is defensively. When Cozens struggles, it looks like he doesn't know how to play the game of hockey. So I don't know where I stand with Cozens right now. I know his name's obviously out there in terms of trade talks. I don't imagine he will be moved before the trade deadline. I imagine he'll be here at least through the end of the season, and they'll kind of reevaluate that come off-season time. But those are 2 guys where if one of them, and one of them being Dylan Cozens, plays up to his potential, I think this season probably looks a little bit different. And you could throw Jack Quinn into that as well, who, again, when looks good, he looks good. When he looks bad, he's like Cozens. When they look bad, they look like they don't know what they're doing on the ice. They look like they don't belong. But when they look good, they look like the players that we've kind of envisioned. It's just I don't know how to get them to play consistently because it's clearly not a coaching thing. Cozens was playing like this last year, and he's playing like that again this year. Quinn, I don't really know what to attribute it to because he looked really good when he was healthy last year. He's healthy now, so I'm not really sure what the issue is there. It's just, this team has found new ways to just put themselves in a terrible position, because when you look at almost every number, especially their offensive metrics, they should be in the thick of the playoff chase, but they're not even close.
Let's go to Dylan Cozens' post-game thoughts from the game against Anaheim, brought to you by Wild Bill's Auto Repair, helping customers stay safe and confident on the road in Niagara since 2012 in honor of the late William Robert Hunter. Let's hear what Dylan Cozens had to say following his 3-assist performance against the Anaheim Ducks in their comeback victory with those 3 goals in that third period. We'll come back and react to it as well.
The penalties were over. You guys just took off. You just couldn't get one by them in the first period.
Yeah, it sucked to go down 2-0 there off penalty kill goals. But we just kept battling. Even when things weren't going well, we just kept battling, kept working, and we trusted that we were going to win this game, and we never gave up.
What was Lindy's message at the end of the second period? You guys have played a pretty good game aside from maybe several minutes at that point.
Yeah, he wasn't too happy with it. He knew we had more to give, and motivated us to just go and work and want it more than them, and I think we came out good in the third.
Yeah, what was clicking so well in the third? I mean, you guys really controlled the play there.
I think we were just playing a little desperate, making plays. We knew that we needed to score a couple to get back in that game, so we weren't scared to make plays, and we put a few on the net.
The 3 of you know each other very well. In the first shift, you're together again. It's in the net. I mean, the familiarity has to help when you get put together again, when you hadn't played together in a while.
Yeah, for sure. I think playing with those 2 guys, we played a lot together in the past and had a lot of success in the past. So So, we just know where we're going to be. I always know that JJ is going to be sitting there, wanting the puck on the back door. So, I don't even have to look. I just know he's there wanting the goal. So, it's a great play with those two guys. I think we see the ice well together.
Henry hasn't had the easiest season. When he gets rewarded like that, how happy are you for him?
Yeah, so happy. He comes to the rink every day and works. Obviously, he's been through a little bit this year with not being in the lineup every game, but he's a great player. He's got all the tools, and he's just been playing with a lot of confidence since Four Nations, and we're all really happy for him.
You guys have talked for years about wanting to make this a difficult place to play and starting to have success at home. What does it mean you guys had to start really? 9 of the last 11 at home. You guys are really starting to make this a place where you're having success. Yeah,
we want it to be a loud, tough building for teams to come into, and I think when we play the right way, we play physical. We get the crowd behind us, and they get loud. They give us a lot of energy, which helps us a lot. And we want it to be a tough place to play here in Buffalo, and I think we did that tonight.
When it happens to you, you went down 5-on-3. The second penalty wasn't really a penalty, but you got to get over it. There's nothing you can do about it. How do you get yourselves just past that, even though they wound up getting a goal out of it and it really wasn't a penalty?
Yeah, obviously at that stage in the game, there's a lot of game left, so obviously we weren't too thrilled with the call, and they score on it, but you just got to move on. You're going to give up goals, and you just got to move on and find the next one.
There was Dylan Cozens post game. Austin, it's nice to hear number 24 a little bit upbeat. He's taken a beating, pun intended, in the media this year. And again, some of it has been, warranted for what we expect from Dylan Cozens, a guy, that was on Team Canada radar just a couple of years ago. 30 points in the 56 games, a minus 13, but and he had no points in that game again in that 8-2 win against the Rangers, which was wild to me. But he had that big third period against Anaheim after a pretty bad second period all around by the team. I think that game was just like a microcosm of the whole season. They play a good 20 minutes, maybe even a decent first period, have a terrible second period, get down 2-0, and have to have a heroic 3-goal comeback. But what were your thoughts on what Cozens had to say there?
Yeah, again, I think almost every criticism that's been thrown his way has been more than warranted, right?
Right.
He's a $7 million player, is supposed to be a producer and a second-line center, and he just hasn't done that enough. Like you said, 8-2 win against the Rangers, he did nothing. He was a big part of this game, which is good. That's what you want to see, but it's just the consistency. Like I said, it's the extremes with Cozens. When it's going bad, it's going bad. When it's going good, it's going really good. There's no happy medium. There's no consistency there. He needs to find that level. I'm sure it's hard. I'm sure it's difficult, right? Pressure's probably wearing on him a little bit here and there, but definitely a good thing. It's good for him to have an impact like that. Just hopefully he can string it together. I'm curious to see what Lindy does with him going forward. Do they go back? Like I said, do they go back to what was working, or do they kind of try Tage back at center? They try the kids line back together, and then they put, Coolidge, McLeod, and Zucker is a decent third line. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what will happen. But with Cozens, if he's going to be here and he's going to be a long-term part of this future, the last 6 games here is going to be a pretty good indicator on if he can do it or not. Talking about games being at home, they only have 10 home games left, 11 home games left. So most of their games are on the road left. So, going to have to see some of that consistency, work hard, and all that stuff filter over into the road games as well here, because it's been fun to watch them play at home lately. It really has been, but it's just like I said. It's just, you can hear it in my voice. It's so hard to get excited when you just know there's no future for this season. It's just on to next year.
Right. If they weren't last place, and you keep saying 13-game losing streak doesn't happen, they're right in the thick of things right now, and we could be talking about them trying to battle for that second wild card spot. But you dig yourself a hole like that. Something that Lindy Ruff mentioned in the post-game presser, and that's up on our YouTube channel, Armchair GM Sports Network YouTube channel, if you guys want to go listen to Lindy Ruff's full post-game thoughts. He was asked about Owen Power and what his development has been like this year, and Lindy basically said, Owen Power is probably the hardest working player in practice. He comes to the rink with a good attitude every day. And with his unique skill set, Austin, we talk about it all the time, because he's a bigger player, everybody expects him to be, this bruising defenseman, basically the same type of criticism that Tyler Myers got when he was here, when he won, the Calder Trophy, as an offensive defenseman, when he's that big. And then he basically got ran out of town for the same reasons that Owen Power gets criticized for. But when you're that size and you can skate that well and you have that offensive ability and the gifts that he has to make himself a first overall pick, it's nice to see that things are starting to come around for him. The points are starting to come there, the assists and things like that, what we expect. You mentioned he's not going to be a Darlene point producer, but it's nice to see guys like Cozens and Power start to at least see some glimpses, more Power than Cozens consistently. But as you mentioned, I think Owen Power, wrongfully gets more criticism than not because he just doesn't move guys in front of the net. And I think too many people put too much thought into that as, the reason why they don't like him as a defenseman. But there's so many different ways to play defense in the National Hockey League these days. It's not just a cookie cutter thing if you're an offensive and defensive D. And I think Owen Power is really, the one of those defensemen that you can say is just a hybrid guy, and he's going to play the way that he needs to be successful. And I think, what we've seen from him is only going to get better as he goes on here the next year or two.
Yeah, I mean, he's on pace to play every game this year. He's on pace for 46 points. So, sure, he's not producing at a Darlene level, but he's producing at a really high level for a defenseman. When you look at it in terms of, 5-on-5 points per 60 minutes, Byram, Darlene, and Owen Power are all amongst the top in the entire NHL. The Charging Buffalo threw that stat out there the other day, and that's extremely impressive. So for Owen Power, is he the bruiser? No, like you said, Tyler Myers is a pretty good comparison. A guy you just look at him and you're like, oh, that guy should be physical and all that stuff. Well, no, that's not his game. He's a finesse player, and you're seeing it. Also, you watch him the last couple of games. The defensive game is there. It's developing. I mean, you look at Rasmus Dahlin this year and his two-way game and how it's taken off. Dahlin's in year 6 right now. So it takes time to develop your defensive side. Dahlin has been good two-way defender his entire career, but people really don't understand how valuable he has been defensively the last season or two. Power's going to get there eventually. He's too talented a player. He's too good a skater. He's too big a guy to not get there. Is he going to be physical? No. I also, again, like Dahlin, this organization has not set him up to succeed as good as he could have. They haven't had Power have a consistent partner, right? He was playing with Yoki Haru last night, and, nothing against Yoki Haru. He can't be in the lineup regularly, right? He hasn't been an everyday player. He's not a top 4 defenseman, so I still maintain getting Power a true defender, a partner who can play with him. The way Byram and Dahlin have played together, right? Dahlin has played pretty much good with everybody, but Byram and Dahlin, for some reason, they shouldn't click. They've just clicked. They need to find someone who will click with Power, and it'll unlock him to another level. So, yeah, he needs to be more consistent, like Cozens. I think his level of consistency is a lot better than Cozens is. I think there isn't as many dips with Owen Power's game as there are with Dylan Cozens, but he's a guy that the Sabres obviously committed to and have faith in, and absolutely should, because if you watch him play, rather than just looking at the box score or rather just looking at how many hits he has, because he doesn't do that, if you actually watch him play, you see the things that he's good at. And it's like I said, I will defend it. I am an Owen Power defender, so I know it's probably going to piss off a lot of people, but that's just who he's a very good player, and it's not a surprise to me that Lindy Ruff said he's one of the most hardest working guys, because when he got drafted, I interviewed his former GM in Chicago, Ryan Hardy, and he had glowing things to say about him, kind of echoing what Ruff has said about him.
You don't like Matthias Samuelsson as his partner?
Well, I'll give Miss Samuelsson some praise later in the episode. I do not, but I think he deserves a little bit of praise, and we'll get into that a little bit later.
All right. We'll save that for swords up, swords down, but before we hit the break, Austin, watching that game against Anaheim, that second period where they were just throwing blind passes, they couldn't enter the zone. They ended up out shooting the Ducks 18-6 in the third, but they couldn't do anything for the first 40 minutes, and you're thinking, what is going on with this team? The consistency level, not just for Cozens and Power, but the whole team. It seems like it comes in waves, and they look like completely different teams from period to period. And I think that's where you can say, that you're excited, but you're also frustrated because they never put a 60-minute effort together where start to finish they're the dominant team. They come away with the 2 points, and they just have a tidy victory. I feel like every time this team wins, it's got to be some sort of struggle, even against a team like Anaheim who doesn't score a lot of goals. you're down 2-0 against that team, and they almost scored with the goalie pulled, but you came away with the 2 points and had a great third. But you also see, where I guess the holes in their play are, because they're there glowingly on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's tough. Like, I'm going to sound like a Sabres defender here, and that's not really who I am. But I think that was one of their best 5-on-5 games of the season. I know the second period was a little not the greatest, but that first period and that third period, domination isn't exactly, I don't think that does it justice as to what they did. Just in the first period, Dostal made some key saves, and Dahlin and was it Quinn? There was 2 massive posts hit in that first period that could have drastically changed how the flow of that game went. I think that Sabres-Ducks game was probably one of their best 5-on-5 60-minute games of the season. Again, you can talk about Anaheim not exactly being the best team, but they were 7-1 in their last 8 heading into that game. Like, Anaheim was on fire. Sure, they were without Trevor Zegras, but it's not like Trevor Zegras is some elite 5-on-5 player. So it's finding that happy medium, like you said. You don't want to take your foot off the gas for the middle period there, but it's special teams, and special teams has been one of the themes we've talked about this year that have just sunk this team. There's a lot of reasons why this team is in the playoffs, and I think special teams is the easiest one to point to, because their power play sucks and their penalty kill has been so inconsistent, where, if the power play scores a couple goals in that first period, or if the penalty kill, doesn't, the 5-on-3 was hard. I understand it wasn't exactly a good 5-on-3 to call, but it's a 5-on-3 nonetheless. You got to find a way to kill that off, especially when you're dominating the way that they did. So it's unfortunate that the second period was a bit of a dip, but I think when you look at that game with a broad scope, you have to, if you could replicate that Sabres-Ducks performance in terms of their 5-on-5 play, this team would be one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's just specialty teams and stretches of games like that second period just, were frustrating, but they did pull it together. And you mentioned getting that production 5-on-5, and we'll talk about it a little bit in the second segment, where Jason Zucker is, one of your best power play guys, and he might not even be on the team in the next couple of weeks. But we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to give us our swords up, swords down. We're going to do a quick preview of the trade deadline with the upcoming UFAs, and where the team goes the next 5 games leading into the deadline. So stay right here. We're right back on Sabres Semantics, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre. Back after this.
Are you currently looking for work in the Niagara region? If so, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Centre, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road in Niagara Falls. Their many free services include a fully staffed resource area open to the public, resume and cover letter writing, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment, training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, Better Jobs Ontario information, and registration assistance. Check out their website at ehc.on.ca or call 905-358-0021 for more information. The Niagara Employment Help Centre, helping people find work since 1983. This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario.
Wild Bill's Auto Repair is your local center for auto maintenance and repair in the Niagara region. Since 2012, Wild Bill's Auto Repair and Body Shop has been helping customers stay safe and confident on the road, knowing their vehicle is in top running condition through the garage's services. Located at 7868 Oakwood Drive in Niagara Falls, the garage started as a tribute to the owner's father, William Robert Hunter, who passed away, continuing the same community spirit and high level of service which customers can expect from him back at Hunter's Auto Repair. Their multi-award-winning auto shop has earned the trust of the Niagara community with its fair treatment of all customers who can feel confident they'll get trustworthy advice and repairs during their visit. Their experienced crew loves meeting new people and looks forward to forming a lasting partnership for the care of your vehicles. To find out more or to book a service, contact them today at 905-358-7868 or wildbillsauto.ca. Wild Bill's Auto Repair, helping customers stay safe and confident on the road since 2012.
Pets bring immense joy to our homes, becoming an integral part of our families. But this living, loving experience often requires a little extra care and attention. That's where Global Pet Foods comes in, with owners and staff ready to support you every step of the way. Check out one of their locations today. 3643 Portage Road in Niagara Falls, 160 Highway 20 in Font Hill, or 400 Scott Street and 344 Glendale Avenue in St. Catharines. Global Pet Foods, where pets are undeniably part of the family. Proud to sponsor the Dog Pound Podcast, the official podcast of the Niagara Ice Dogs.
Fuel up your day with Gale's Gas Bars. They're your go-to gas stations in the Niagara region. Remember, at Gale's, they're not just a gas station. They're a local tradition. Whether you're hitting the road or staying cozy at home, choose Gale's. Gale's Gas Bars provide reliable fuel that keeps you moving. Stop in for quality you can trust and service with a smile. Don't settle for less. Head to Gale's Gas Bars today, because when it comes to fuel,
You're going to Gales!
learn more at gales.ca.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Hey, hey, here we go, it's hockey night in Buffalo. Hey, hey, here we go, the boys in blue, white, and gold. Hey, hey, here we go, make some noise, get in the zone. All for one and one for all, let's hear you from your heart and soul.
Welcome back to part 2 of today's Sabres Semantics episode right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, proudly brought to you by the Niagara Employment Help Centre. Austin Broad and Brandon Caputo are back with you, continuing to discuss the Sabres' recent stretch of games, what we expect them to do in this next stretch leading up to the trade deadline, and we're going to give our swords up, swords down of what we've liked and maybe not liked from the Sabres in this most recent stretch. Thank you to everybody that's watching today on the YouTube version. Make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and smash that bell to stay up to date with all of our video content, as well as on our audio platforms. Thank you very much to everybody that's choosing to listen to us today on audio. Make sure to give us a follow on X at Sabres Semantics. Stay up to date with our Sabres coverage. We don't have any polls today, but we usually put our polls up there as well. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff for you guys. So, Austin, we're going to start with swords up, swords down in today's second part of our episode. Let's start with the negative so that we can end off on a positive. You know me, the eternal optimist here. So what is your swords down as of late for the Sabres?
My swords down as of late, like I said, there's not a whole lot to pick from. I'm just going to come out straight up with just consistency from Luukkonen is something that I would like to see. Like I said, he was very bad in that Predators game going into the break. He was solid against the Rangers, obviously. But the Ducks game, to me, people can say what they want. Both of those goals could have been stopped. I know they were 5-on-3 and a 5-on-4. It's a power play, but why was that game 2-0? Well, that game was 2-0 because Lucas Dostal was standing on his head, keeping Anaheim in it, and Luukkonen gave up 2 goals that probably should have been stopped. This isn't anything bad about Luukkonen. It's kind of been a theme for him this entire year. He goes through stretches where he's really good, and then he goes through stretches where he's really bad. Just need to find some level of consistency with him, and I think that'll be going forward. This sword's down. I'm not going to sugarcoat here. It's a little bit of a nitpick because I don't think there has been overall that much to be upset about over the last month of Sabres hockey. So I'll go with consistency for Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
I think it was 2 goals on 5 shots against Anaheim last night, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was, I'm with you. I think what we expect from Luukkonen, he should have had both those goals. So again, not trying to harp on him because he has had some good games here, but like you said, if you have to find something to critique there, Luukkonen needs to come up with some of those, more, I guess, textbook saves that you would expect a goaltender to make. Is that fair?
Yeah, just it's the big timely save, right? I always see oh man, but Luukkonen should have had that one, and people would always just say yeah, but it was a prime scoring chance. And my response is, goalies are allowed to stop prime scoring chances. That's actually their job. That's why you have a goalie. Are they going to stop every single one? No. Like I said, probably could have stopped that McTavish one. I know it was a 5-on-3. Looked like he was a little bit late getting over. And then the second power play goal is just, to me, that one needs to be stopped every single time. So if at least one of those should have been stopped, like you said, when he's good, he's good. It's just if he can find that consistency he had last year, it would really help this team long term in the future. But like I said, they've been playing well lately, so I'll I'll scrape the bottom of the barrel and just go with that for my negative.
And you don't expect him to be, Connor Hellebuck or Jake Ottinger here, but you want him to at least be what you expect that you're paying your number one goaltender to be. But again, not to sit here and criticize Luukkonen too much here. My sword's down. I mean, it's pretty obvious is the power play. I mean, we kind of talked about it before we went to break on the first segment, Austin. I don't think much needs to be said about that. It's just been terrible. We saw last night against Anaheim, the other night against Anaheim, just when Jason Zucker is your top power play guy, and if he's out of the lineup, they're not scoring power play goals, there's an issue there. As much as I like Jason Zucker, he's got 9 power play goals for this team. Second on the team is Dahlin and Thompson with 4 each, and then you've got Peterka with 3. But when Jason Zucker, as a 1-year deal veteran that might get dealt at the deadline, what are they going to do if he's traded in 5 games? Who's the UFA they're going to bring in at the deadline to replace his power play production? So, again, not to harp on Seth Appert here, because I think it's a collective of him and Lindy Ruff's system and what he's trying to tell Seth Appert to do on the power play and with the players as well, not getting it done. Something's got to give on that, and we've seen that now for the last 2 seasons be an issue after what we saw, 3 seasons ago now. Where they had that was one of their better things that they had going for them, even though they missed the playoffs. But yeah, power play just has not been consistent enough, and Jason Zucker has made their numbers look better in that sense.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, if they do trade him and move on from him, I don't think they're bringing in anyone to replace him on the power play. But my thoughts, and I think what they should do would just be throw Kulich up on that top power play spot, because I think he
hasn't got it yet at all.
No, I think he deserves that. So that's kind of what I would do if they do that. But yeah, it's nothing against Zucker. He's been phenomenal this year. It's easily more than what you expected when you signed him. But yeah, it's not exactly a great thing when he's your best power play producer. That speaks more to just how badly coached the power play is, because I think the power play has talent, right? We know how good Tage Thompson is. We know how good Rasmus Dahlin is. We know how good JJ Peterka is. To me, it's just, I don't know, it's the system. And if everything that, we hear is true, the guy running the power play was supposedly the guy they wanted to be their coach in waiting. So not great for the power play.
27th in the league, just not going to get it done.
No.
And they were facing the 27th ranked power play in Anaheim, and Anaheim looked like the, 2001 New Jersey Devils on the PK the other night. But anyways, what's your swords up this week, Austin?
So like I said, I was going to give Samuelsson a little bit of praise, and so he's going to get my sword up. And
wow. I never thought I would see that on this show.
It's not – this might be short-sighted or whatever, but I'll give him some credit. The last 2 games, maybe it's a coincidence that Jordan Greenway's back in the lineup and this stuff has happened, but Samuelsson, there was talks about if a leadership change was going to happen, and I think everyone kind of knew it was directed at him. Still has the A on his chest. Has shown a little bit more animosity and fight for his teammates, sticking up for people, getting involved with scrums and things like that. So sort up to him for, if this continues, it looks like message received. So sort up to him for receiving that message and actually doing something about it. Need to see it happen, like I said, a little bit more consistently, but played really well in the Anaheim game. Everyone did at 5-on-5, let's be honest. But just sort up to him for finally displaying characteristics of what a player with his reputation and leadership should be doing. You should be a physical guy. You should be a thorn in the side after the whistle. You should be getting in people's faces when they do stuff to your goalie or a teammate. And I think he's been doing that. Again, it's only been 2 games, but I think he deserves some credit for that. I might be a little crazy because that's not a lot to earn some credit in my books, but I wanted to highlight that because I do think it was he got involved with McTavish. He got involved with a couple things in the Rangers game. So hopefully that's the turning of a new leaf for him. It's kind of sad that this is what it took for him to start doing that. But if he keeps it up, it could be a nice little turning point for him in his career. Like I said, he's still a third pair defenseman, but at least he's showing to have some of that jam and physicality that we expect from him.
Yeah, especially wearing that A, as you mentioned. Speaking of just expecting them to look like NHL players, my sword's up's going to Henri Jokiharju.
Also someone who deserves it.
Scored in the 4 Nations for Finland, which was wild, by the way. I think his odds to score was like plus 15,000 So
Yeah,
whoever bid or bet on Henry Jokiharju to score, I hope you're enjoying your multi-million-dollar vacation somewhere. But he had a good showing for Finland. I mean, who would have expected him to score? We kind of like laughed when he got added to the roster or when he was on the roster about like, wow, Finland really is, scraping here if they've got guys like Ristolainen and Jokiharju on the roster. But he held his own there, going up against obviously some all-world teams there in USA, Canada, Sweden, and then comes back and has that sharp angle shot goal that you'd expect Dostal to have, but he still scored it. It was a big goal for the Sabres to get that thing tied with the Ducks, and then eventually get the game. Or that was the game winner, was it not?
Yes, it was.
It was the game winner. Yes, it was the third goal. It was the game-winning goal for the Sabres in that game against Anaheim. I think it just kind of caught Dostal off guard. The fact that A, he hit the net from that spot, and B, that it kind of beat him over the shoulder. But for me, like as you mentioned, because they hadn't really given us a whole lot of positives, I think what you've seen from Jokiharju, at least the last few games or so, maybe he has some confidence going forward. I still expect them to probably try to move him at the deadline still, but maybe that helps his value and maybe that helps the Sabres, or just gives him some sort of confidence the next 5 games to show that he's an NHL defenseman.
Yeah, what a good time for him to finally start to play like the Jokiharju that, like, there was a couple of years where he looked really good. So, like, it's good to see him kind of start getting back to, like you said, not to take away from that goal that he scored because it's fantastic. Someone did point out that it looked like Dostal kind of pushed the net back when he pushed off a little bit, and it kind of made the hole even a little bit bigger. So he might have got a little bit of help there. But kudos to him for taking that shot and having the accuracy to put it up there. That's a huge goal from a player you don't expect it from, like you said. And maybe just you said whether he does get traded or not, I'm not exactly sure what his value is around the league, but it's good for him, and it could be good for the Sabres if his trade value actually is affected there. But yeah, again, it's only been 2 games, but he looked really good in that Rangers game as well. So good sign for the Sabres or anyone who wants to look at a right shot defenseman, because the timing could not be better.
Yeah, obviously right shot defensemen are always overvalued in the league anyway, even if they aren't very good, because just there are more left shot than right shot defensemen in this world. So they're always going to be, at least somewhat sought after, especially at the trade deadline. So speaking of that, Austin, like you look at those guys that are available. Jokiharju's only got 6 points on the year. I mean, that was only his 3rd goal. He's only got three assists on the year, which is pretty laughable for somebody that you would expect to have a lot more. You also mentioned Jordan Greenway, who just came back from an extended injury there, 8 points in the 22 games that he's played, so in a limited role there. And then obviously Jason Zucker, probably the Sabres' best trade piece going into the deadline, 44 points in 54 games, 9 power play goals, and 16 power play points total, which leads the team as far as in power play goals. Dahlin's got 11 power play assists. Actually, yeah, Zucker still is number 1 in total power play points for the Sabres at the time of recording this as well. So those are the big 3, I guess you could say, for unrestricted free agents. You mentioned a deal for a guy like Dylan Cozens with the term. It might not be something that they could do. Bowen Byram's going to need a contract in the offseason, but he's still an RFA, as you've brought up on this show. So we're going to just talk about the UFAs real quick here, and they're most likely going to be sellers. You'd expect Kevin Adams to hopefully try to make some sort of good hockey trade, but like he found with the Byram for Middlestat swap last year, but who knows what that would be. So we're going to talk about here to end the show, Zucker, Greenway, and Jokiharju. Austin, do you expect all 3 of those guys to move? And if so, are you expecting any sort of significant return for any 3 of those guys?
Jokiharju, I wouldn't expect any sort of significant return. Would I expect him to? I don't even know if I expect him to be moved, honestly, because he's not really a name that you've been seeing out there. But also, it makes sense because he hasn't had that good of a year. So, like, maybe a team looking for defensive depth, right? Like, I think it was a couple of years back, Buffalo traded Robert Hagg to the Panthers. So, like, there's a trade out there for him somewhere, I'm sure. He's still only 25. Like, he's young, so right shot defenseman. Don't think the return there would be significant. The other 2 are interesting. Obviously, Zucker's been having a phenomenal year, playing in top line minutes. I feel like there's definitely some value to be had there. Greenway hasn't played a lot, isn't producing a lot, but if you just look at him, he's big, he can skate, he can kill penalties, he has physical edge. He is the type of player that teams would love to acquire for a playoff push. So I expect there to be significant interest in him as well. The interesting part, the kicker is we've heard reports that Buffalo was going to try to keep Zucker. We've heard, Greenway told Lance Lazowski he would love to sign an extension in Buffalo, which I thought was interesting because you don't have to say that. Right, like you could just do the standard. We'll see what happens at the trade deadline. If I'm here, I want to be here. Like, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of interesting that he said he would like to sign an extension here. But what is interesting to me is if they do have interest in keeping both of them, are they willing to risk keeping them past the deadline? Because that to me would be a mistake. I would love it if both of them are here. I got into some, I've seen it on Sabres Twitter. It's a bit of a debate. Why not keep both? They're two guys that have had an impact and be productive. And I'm like, yeah, I agree with anyone who says that. But the problem is if you're keeping both of those guys, that means you got to move two of the other ones then. Under no circumstance can they run back the same forward group. I don't care what anyone says. I know forwards aren't exactly the problem here, but under no circumstances can they run back the same forward group. If you're keeping Greenway and Zucker, that means you got to look to be moving a guy like Quinn or a guy like Cozens or even potentially a guy like Krebs. Like you have to be moving two other forwards then. The reason I think it's just easy to look at Greenway and Zucker and move them is because they're not tied to this team. Those are the guys that move at the trade deadline. So we'll see. I'm interested to see how the Sabres handle it. This could be a moot point because, they could announce extensions for them next week before the trade deadline and then nothing matters there. But even if the Sabres do get some good value with these guys for the deadline, any picks that they get here, I don't have confidence in it, but I hope Kevin Adams is smart enough to use those picks as currency to go get something else because we cannot be acquiring second-round picks and then using those second-round picks to draft players. That's just not what the Sabres should be doing right now. So it'll be an interesting trade deadline. It honestly will be.
Yeah, I mean, the draft pick and prospect cupboard is as stacked as you could want it. You mentioned they need to start turning that into players that are going to be ready now. I mean, they've talked about being, building through the draft. Well, they've been doing that for the last 14 years and it hasn't worked multiple times, and they keep, retrying that, and that's great and all, but you need to start turning this thing into those NHL players, top six players, top six forward, which is something that they've talked about. I think the interesting part to me, Austin, is the Granlund trade from San Jose to Dallas kind of setting the market for pending UFAs this year. I know we're still waiting for Rickard Rakell if he's going to be possibly moved from Pittsburgh. We know Pittsburgh's in full, ready to fire sale, except if your name's not Crosby or Malkin. It's going to be harder for them to move a guy like Erik Karlsson with his contract. But I look at that Granlund trade. They also got Cody Ceci, if you count him as an asset. But they got a first and third round pick, and I know I think the third is has a condition on it as well. But regardless, a first round pick for Michael Granlund as a UFA forward who is playing on San Jose's top line because they have such a young team there. They'll be in town next Tuesday. I'll be there for that game. But it's interesting that there's always that one trade that sets the market for unrestricted free agents, and I think what we saw for the Granlund trade, if the Sabres could get anything close to that for Jason Zucker, who's arguably had pretty much the same production that you saw Granlund have in San Jose on their top power play unit, playing on their top line with their young players. Zucker's got 9 power play goals, so first and a third might be a stretch, and if you add CC in there, maybe, I don't know, somehow that adds value, but if you're looking at that for a Sabres perspective to at least get those assets in to hopefully then go and use as ammunition to get something bigger in the offseason, as you mentioned, go big game hunting, I'd be okay with that. If Zucker is moved, I want it to be something of that nature as opposed to just moving him for a third round pick, because I'd rather just keep him at that point.
Yeah, like you said, I think Granlund might have a slight edge in production there, but same age, same contract status, things like that. Yeah, like I said, I do not think they should be collecting picks and prospects. But if someone calls you up and offers you a first round pick for Jason Zucker, like, you have to take that.
Yep.
And then you have another piece to potentially go elsewhere with. Yeah, so if someone comes in and offers you a first round pick for one of these two guys, you have to take it. It's just not good asset management to not take that, unless you are certain an extension is going to get done.
Right. And there hasn't been indication that there is going to be one before March 8th.
No, like my thinking was, and again, there is no blueprint to this stuff. But my thinking was if extension for either one of those guys was going to happen, it was going to happen over the Four Nations break, right? We saw Vancouver announce the O'Connor and Lankinen extensions during that time. I think we saw another extension too. Correct me if I'm wrong, but even if we didn't, to me was the perfect time to get it done. It wasn't announced. Now again, this doesn't mean anything. There's still, a week and a half until the trade deadline, so it still could happen. But my thinking was if it didn't happen then, it's not happening now. So if someone comes in and offers you a first round pick for either one of those guys, you have to take it. Obviously, the hope would be you use that first round pick and turn it into something else. If we're drafting 2 players in the first round this year, I don't think anyone's going to be happy, and no one should be happy. So that's where the trade deadline is an interesting approach for Kevin Adams this year, because does he try to swing big for the hockey trade at the trade deadline, or does he just collect assets and plan for the offseason? Because something that you and I we have talked about, but like we're both under the assumption Kevin Adams isn't going anywhere, right?
Nope.
Okay. So that's where that also adds another layer to this trade deadline to me is he going to stock the cupboard to maybe finally be aggressive in the offseason, or is he going to try and be aggressive now? That to me is the interesting story with the Sabres. So
what you're saying is job security. If it was in more danger, you'd expect a big swing come this.
I keep going back to that last trade deadline that Tim Murray had where he made no moves and was fired. I don't think that's happening with Kevin Adams. But if Kevin Adams makes 0 moves because he's hoping to sign Greenway and Zucker and then doesn't get either signed, that's a bad look.
It is. And Nemesnikov from Winnipeg was the other re-sign. He got 2 years, $6 million, so 3 per. Like if they could re-sign Zucker for $3 to $4 million, I think that's a quality guy, 32 years old.
I'd sign Zucker for the same salary he's at now.
At what, like a 2 or 3 year deal?
2 years. If you got to go 2 years, $5 million per year. Why not? Like I said, if they keep both, I'm fine with that. But you need to get both signed, which is hard to do in a week and a half. And then 2, if you keep both, you have to move other forwards anywhere. Like I said, it'll be interesting because does the Dylan Cozens rumors finally come to a head, or does he just go straight up with the rental guys? But either way, I think he needs to be active at this trade deadline.
At least have the phones on. I mean, we hear him talk. When he talked to the media about a month ago with that train wreck press conference, when he said that he's on the phone all the time talking trade. Well, we haven't seen anything yet. How many trades have we seen? I think we've seen 30 trades in the National Hockey League. Other than that AHL swap that they did, because I'm not even counting that, they haven't made any moves. They put Obey Kubel on waivers after it only took a 13-game losing streak, and then a month after that to finally put somebody on waivers at least. But you've got a guy like Zach Benson on the 4th line. To me, that's not productive. Like that, I don't think that's good for his development because he's not going to be a 4th line player. You want to develop him into the next Peyton Krebs as a 1st-round guy that's just going to be a 4th line center. I don't think they want to do that with Zach Benson. They've got high hopes for him. So, yeah, I meant like you said, if they move out Zucker, like they better have a plan to replace that or make a hockey trade where they get a top 6 forward. Like it's funny that Colorado is looking to possibly move Middlestat to try to upgrade their 2nd-line center role. The Crosby pipe dream. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it's just funny that Colorado's looking to move Middlestat and Buffalo's kind of looking for a top 6 winner. I'm not saying that they would ever, entertain bringing him back. I don't think he wants to come back, but it's just funny how those things kind of work now a year after that trade was made that, it looks good on the Sabres end with Byram, but now he needs a contract in the offseason. Like you said, Cozens and Byram are those 2 guys are tougher trades to make in season, but I mean, we just saw that Nietzsche and Rantanen trade. So they can be done, but realistically, if you're going to ask me if I'm a betting man, I just say Kevin Adams moves 2 of those 3 UFAs, and we don't really see those big moves because I don't think his job security is something that he's worried about right now.
Yeah, and interesting with Byram because I kind of have this talk with a buddy of mine at work, and I'm just like, we both kind of agree, like, the Byram move could make sense, but like I'm not in a rush to move Byram. He's 2 years away from being a UFA, so no matter what, he's on your team for 2 years. You don't have to rush to move Byram. Him and Dahlin are working together. If I'm the Sabres, I'm holding on to that, unless that Pettersson deal does come up, but like when you look at Vancouver and the moves that they made, they acquired Marcus Pettersson. I don't know why they would want a guy like Bowen Byram. So to me, if I'm Kevin Adams, I'm keeping Bowen Byram for at least the next 2 years because he has to be here. He's a pending restricted free agent. So also another layer that we can talk about later because it's offseason stuff, but the Sabres have so many pending RFAs that Adams is going to have to be busy in the summer with his own housekeeping stuff. So if you want to try, if I'm him, again, easier said than done, but if I'm him, I'm looking for that hockey trade right now. So my offseason kind of be mapped out a little bit differently because you have McLeod, you have Quinn, who will be a little bit easier because he's played himself out of anything besides a 1 to 2 year, $1 million a year contract. But you have McLeod, Byram, Peterka, who are 3 key RFAs. And then if you want to throw Devin Levi in there as well, but again, I think because of his AHL playing time, like it seems like his contract will be a little bit easier, but he has some key RFAs to re-sign and guys that I know he might be a little scared of committing to because of what's happened in the past, but guys like McLeod and Peterka have been playing really well and are probably worthy of some term. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. So I hope like I said, I hope we're sitting here when we do our trade deadline episode and either Zucker and Greenway are signed to extensions or at least one of them is gone because I think if both of them are here past the deadline with no contract extension, that's a failure. But part of me thinks that there's actually a strong possibility that that is the case. And to me, that's bad.
So when you look at it, Carolina, Montreal twice, San Jose, Tampa Bay, Florida, we're going to count. It's deadline day, so you can't really count that because they'll probably make the moves before that game starts. So, 10 points here available. Like, is there any way where the Sabres win 8 of 10, which is, Montreal twice and San Jose, those are winnable games. Tampa Bay.
Those are 3 big games.
Tampa Bay and Carolina, you could probably chalk up as losses, but there's 6 points right there against Montreal twice and San Jose that could be had if they play up to potential. So do you think there's any way that their next 5 games they somehow play themselves out of sellers, which as stupid as that sounds, like where they think that, maybe we'll hold on to these guys even without extensions for guys like Zucker and Greenway, that there might be some sort of scenario where Kevin Adams says, you know what, I'm going to stick with this core that I have right here.
The thought has crossed my mind. I'd be lying if I said it didn't. The only thing I can say is I think there are like so many games between now and then, like where the teams in front of them play each other to where like I think, let me take a look. I think was it tomorrow? Yeah, like tomorrow Detroit plays Columbus. Those are both wild card teams.
Yep.
So all right, so
you have to leapfrog every team.
Yeah, it's like to me, like that's what I look at is there like the game, like the rest of their schedule for the most part. I'm not saying it's easy, but like there's a decent handful of winnable games. But I think because they have to leapfrog so many teams, there's no way they can do that. Now, the different question is, do you believe this front office is silly enough to trick themselves into thinking that if they win 4 out of the next 5, wouldn't put it past them. But like I said, if you use the Granlund trade as a bit of a comparable, if someone offers you a first round pick for one of your 2 rental forwards, you have to take it no matter what. And I know you're not in the process or business of collecting first round picks anymore, but that's a valuable piece to have for someone you're not sure will be on your team next year. So I don't know. Like I said, it's an interesting but not really that interesting trade deadline for the Sabres because they don't really have like the premier piece, but they do have some good pieces that probably should look to move. And I think looking at Puckpedia here, like Greenway does have an 8-team no trade list, but let's be honest, you're Jordan Greenway, you'll waive that to go to like say Winnipeg comes calling. Well, they're one of the best teams in the NHL. I think you waive that to go there for 20 games. So it'll be very interesting. I'm hopeful he'll do the smart thing, but I guess we'll see what happens when we talk next Saturday.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see there. We'll be optimistic, hopefully, and maybe be surprised with some sort of move that Kevin Adams makes at the deadline here with the 3
I will say
pending
this:
UFAs.
there always seems to be one move on trade deadline day, not by the Sabres, just one move on trade deadline day where you're like, wow, like a couple of years ago it was Mantha for Verana. That's more than a couple of years ago, but I remember that trade. I remember, blast from the past, like the Cody Hodgson for Zach Cassian trade, the Martin Erat for Philip Forsberg trade. Like there seems to be like moves that happen on trade deadline day. So like these big shocking moves are possible. Hell, last year Byram for Middlestad is a hockey trade. I know it didn't happen on trade deadline day, but it happened just before it. So like there is precedent for these moves happening. So I'm not holding out, not completely, sold or giving up on the fact that maybe Adams pulls something off. But I think at the very least, the UFAs are interesting enough to have Sabres fans intrigued with what happens on this trade deadline.
We'll be back here to talk about it all live on our YouTube channel here on the night of trade deadline day to discuss the Sabres moves. But that's going to wrap up our Sabres Semantics episode right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Thank you to everybody that watched us today on the YouTube version, those listening on your favorite on-demand audio platform. For Austin Broad, my name is Brandon Caputo. That's it, and we'll talk to you again next week following the NHL Trade Deadline. We'll talk to you then. You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.